I listed your truck for $5,000. Someone's picking it up in an hour. We need the money for my bachelorette party. My fiancée announced. I pocketed my keys, walked out, and hid the truck in my brother's garage. She was waiting for a buyer beside the pink balloons when a uniformed deputy walked toward her group. She said it the way you announce good news. I listed your car on Facebook Marketplace for $5,000. Someone's picking it up in an hour. We need the money for my bachelorette party. She was standing in our kitchen with a wine glass in her hand and two of her closest friends beside her, and she said it like she'd just solved something that had been bothering everyone for a long time. Like I'd been worried about it too, and she'd finally come through. There's a specific kind of silence that happens when you realize the person you were going to grow old with just looked at your life and quietly decided which parts of it belonged to them. I went quiet, not the kind that asks questions, the kind that starts counting. I had exactly 1 hour. Here's how I used it. Brittany Cole and I had been engaged for 14 months when this happened. The wedding was set for April, about 4 months out. We'd been living together just over a year in a 2-bedroom rental on the east side of town, and from the outside things looked the way they were supposed to look. She worked reception at a spa called Meridian, downtown. I did HVAC, heating and air conditioning, commercial and residential, service calls mostly, 5 or 6 days a week. The truck was a 2019 Ford F-150, bought on my own loan 2 years before Brittany and I ever met. The title was in my name, the insurance was in my name, the monthly payment came out of my account alone. I drove it to every job site, every emergency call, every early morning situation where someone's system had gone down overnight and needed to be running before the workday started. It was how I got to work. Brittany had a particular way of approaching decisions. She'd make a choice and then present it, and the presentation always arrived after the deciding was already finished somewhere off-screen. 3 months into the engagement, she mentioned at dinner that she'd put a deposit on a wedding venue, $800, date confirmed, space reserved, check written. When I pointed out that we hadn't discussed it first, she said, I found something I liked and I didn't want to lose it. We talked it through. I let it go. The second thing was the dress. $2,800, shown to me on her phone, already purchased and in transit. When I reminded her we had a budget conversation scheduled for the following weekend, she smiled and said, This isn't an expense, Yancey. It's an investment. I didn't push it. I remember thinking the logic was wrong, but deciding not to fight over something she'd already bought. That Thursday, I pulled into the driveway with condenser parts in the truck bed. One text from Brittany on my phone, Can't wait to tell you some exciting news. I went in through the side door. The kitchen was bright, windows up, music from a phone on the counter, the easy warmth of a gathering that had been going on for a while. Brittany was standing at the island with Kayla Anderson and Madison Price, both of them with wine glasses. The mood in the room had the specific lightness of people who have been having a good afternoon. Brittany turned when the door opened. Her face was lit up. Babe. She set her glass down on the counter. I solved the bachelorette problem. I came in and set my keys down. Then, I noticed another set already on the counter, my truck keys, not hers. She didn't wait for me to ask. She started talking fast, the way she did when she'd been holding something in all day and was finally getting to say it. She had listed the truck on Facebook Marketplace. Me F-150. $5,000. It's worth at least $8,000, so this is basically giving it away. A buyer had already sent a deposit. He was coming at 4 o'clock. I listed your car on Facebook Marketplace for $5,000, she said. Someone's picking it up in an hour. We need the money for my bachelorette party. She said it with the particular energy of someone who had just solved a problem that someone else had been too cautious to solve. I looked at her. I looked at my keys sitting on the counter. I looked at Kayla, who had gone very still, and then at Madison, who had taken a small step backward without seeming to notice she had done it. I didn't answer right away. Something inside me had gone quiet and started taking inventory. It's not our car, Brittany, I said. It's in my name, my insurance, my loan. It's mine. She shifted her weight. You always say we don't have money, but I needed this. It's my bachelorette party. You know how important this is to me. She paused. And honestly, we're getting married. It's practically our car already. The logic was there, from a certain angle. We were engaged. We shared a home. She was making a case based on proximity to permanence, on the idea that the line between mine and ours had already moved, or should have. A person could reason their way there, but she hadn't listed something she believed was ours. She had listed something she knew wasn't hers and moved forward anyway. Those are not the same thing, and the difference between them is the only thing I was thinking about. "Oh my God," she said, voice sharpening. "Why are you being so controlling right now?" I picked up my truck keys off the counter and put them in my pocket. I walked back out the side door without answering her. Because I didn't have an answer, I had something more useful. Craig Stafford lived 4 blocks down, at the far end of the street. We'd known each other since high school, not the close where you talk every week, but the close where you show up when something needs showing up for. He'd been a deputy with the county sheriff's office for 9 years. I wasn't thinking about any of that when I drove toward his house. I just needed to be somewhere that wasn't my kitchen. He was in his garage when I pulled up, still in his department uniform, crouched beside his personal truck with a dipstick in his hand. He straightened when he heard my engine and watched me get out. I stood in his driveway and told him what happened. I kept it short. He set the dipstick down on the hood and looked at me with the flat expression I recognized from situations where he was deciding how seriously to take something. "Man," Craig said. "She listed your car? Like, your actual car, the one that's in your name? Title? Insurance? The loan?" I said. "Everything's mine. She has no claim to it." He picked up a shop rag and wiped his hands slowly. "The buyer paid a deposit already," he said. "That's not just a relationship argument anymore. That's a property transaction that never should have happened." He looked at me. "You've got options here." That was the moment I understood Craig wasn't just someone who would listen to me. We worked the plan out in about 10 minutes, standing in Craig's driveway while the sun dropped behind the tree line. I would drive the truck to my brother Danny's house and leave it in his garage. Craig would meet me at the venue parking lot at 3:45, the same lot where Brittany had told her friends to gather for the pre-party. I texted Danny on the way. He said yes before I finished explaining. It took 20 minutes to get there and another 5 to make the switch. Leaving the phone 150 inches Danny's garage and taking the keys to his 12-year-old Civic, a sedan that smelled like old coffee and French fries. I sat in it in his driveway for a moment with the engine off before I backed out. Brittany had sent 3 messages asking where the truck was. I read them in order and set the phone on the passenger seat face down. There was nothing I wanted to say yet and a lot I wanted to do first. I drove toward the east side and parked 1 block from Rosewood Event Hall with a little over 20 minutes to spare. The buyer was coming at 4 o'clock. Brittany had her friends meeting at that same parking lot. Craig was already on his way in uniform. And I had the address of a Bachelorette pre-party that was about to become something else entirely. It was 3:52 in the afternoon. The parking lot in front of Rosewood Event Hall ran about 40 spaces deep, edged along the left side by a row of ornamental maples whose shadows had stretched long across the pavement in the August heat. The concrete was pale gray, the kind that holds warmth late into the day. A white GMC Yukon sat closest to the venue's double glass doors, and someone had tied 3 pink metallic balloons to the driver's side mirror. They moved slowly in the wind off the road. 7 women stood near that SUV. Kayla was on the far left. Madison had a champagne flute. Someone I didn't recognize was pointing a phone at the group, framing a shot. Brittany stood at the center of all of it, her back to the parking lot entrance, phone in her hand, laughing at something that had just been said. Craig's patrol car was at the far end of the lot. Engine off. Craig's door opened at 3:56. He stepped out in full uniform brown department shirt, silver badge catching the afternoon light, duty belt, dark slacks. He wasn't hurrying. He moved the way people move when they're used to having authority in spaces they walk into and don't feel the need to announce it ahead of themselves. He cleared the first row of parked cars, and the energy in that half of the lot shifted. One woman in the group looked up and went still. She reached out and touched the arm of the woman beside her, without looking away from Craig. Kayla stepped out from the group first, positioning herself between Craig and the others with a polite, questioning look. The expression of someone trying to figure out what's happening before it lands on anyone else. "Can we help you?" she said. Craig looked at her without slowing. "I'm looking for Brittany Cole," he said. Kayla's head turned before she decided it would. Her eyes found Brittany ahead of any conscious choice. Pure reflex. Brittany turned. She'd heard her name, or felt the movement in the group. Her face was open, expectant, the default expression of a host at their own event who is ready to welcome someone new. She was already forming the beginning of a smile. Then she saw the badge. Her eyes went to Craig's shirt first, then the duty belt, then over Craig's shoulder to me, standing about 20 feet back near Danny's Civic with my hands in my pockets. The smile didn't disappear. It stopped, like something playing that someone had hit pause on. She held that half expression for one full second, the look of someone whose face had just arrived somewhere it did not want to be and hadn't yet found the exit. What came after that was smaller. The champagne flute moved from her hand to her side. Her shoulders came in a degree or two. She glanced at Qley, at Madison, at the loose circle of women around her the way you scan for something solid when you understand that what's in front of you cannot be managed the usual way. Craig stopped 3 steps from her. "Ma'am," he said, "I need to ask you a few questions about a vehicle listing on Facebook Marketplace." What? Her voice held for one word before the sentence lost its footing. It's a family thing. We were just trying to sort out some. The vehicle in question is registered to a Yancey Owens, Craig said. "Are you Yancey Owens?" "He's my fiancé. It's basically joint property. We're getting married in." "That's not how property law works in this state, ma'am." His voice was even, not unkind exact. "You listed a vehicle you don't own. The buyer transferred $500 as a deposit. That creates a problem." Behind Brittany, Madison Price set her champagne flute down on the hood of the Yukon. The sound it made was small and clean, like a period placed at the end of a sentence. Someone said, "Oh my God," quietly enough that I couldn't tell who. Brittany looked at the group. She was working through it in real time, trying to find the frame that would let her be in control of what everyone was seeing. "It's fine, guys," she said, with a small, managed laugh. "This is just a misunderstanding." Then she looked directly at me. "You brought a cop to my bachelorette party?" "He reported a potential theft of his vehicle," Craig said, before I could respond. "That's how I came to be here." He turned back to Brittany. "Ma'am, the buyer is entitled to a full refund of his deposit. And depending on how things proceed, you may be looking at potential charges for unauthorized sale of property." I stepped forward. I kept my voice flat. "I have the title. I have the insurance. The loan's been in my name since before we ever met." I wasn't explaining it to her. I was saying it into the open air between us, in the space where the 7 women standing 3 feet behind her could also hear every word clearly. Brittany's face changed in a way I hadn't anticipated. She had been managing Craig, managing me, managing the story she needed the room to receive. She had not once accounted for the 7 women directly behind her. She turned to face them. Her mouth opened and nothing came out. Qley was looking at her phone, not scrolling, just holding it, eyes down. Madison had taken a step back toward the Yukon, arms folded across her chest, gaze on the pavement. The 3 pink balloons on the mirror were still moving in the wind off the road. Brittany said, quietly, not to Craig, not to me, but to the general air in front of her, "This wasn't supposed to go like this. Craig called me that evening while I was sitting in Danny's living room with a plate of reheated pasta I hadn't touched. He gave me the summary. The buyer had been reached, the $500 deposit had been fully refunded, and the listing had been removed. No charges were being filed. I told Craig not to push it. She stayed in the parking lot for a while after you left," Craig said. "Qley stayed with her. The others left." He said it the way he said most things, plainly, without a verdict attached to it. I thanked him and sat there after he hung up. Brittany had called 11 times. I looked at the missed calls for a moment and then set the phone face up on the coffee table, which felt different from face down, though I couldn't have said why. I didn't feel like something had been resolved. I felt like I was very tired, and that I had been for a long time without knowing the source of it. Later that night, I found the contact number for my old landlord in my phone. I didn't call, I just looked at it. The lease I'd walked away from 7 months earlier to move in with Brittany had been month to month, and I thought there was a chance the unit might still be open. That felt like the most useful thought I'd had all week. The messages came in 3 phases. The first was anger, brief and direct. "You humiliated me in front of everyone. You called a cop on me. Do you have any idea what you just did to me?" I read it through and set the phone down. The second phase was damage control, which arrived the following morning. "Babe, I know I made a mistake, but you could have just talked to me instead of making it a whole scene. It was just a car." I read the phrase "just a car" once, then set the phone down again. The truck I took to every job site. The loan that predated our relationship by 2 years. Just a car. The third phase was the one that actually made things worse for her. Brittany called my mother. Sandra and Brittany had always been warm with each other, and I think Brittany believed that warmth would hold when it mattered. My mother called me that same afternoon and kept it brief. "I told her I loved her," Sandra said, "and that I couldn't help her with this one." I don't know exactly what Brittany said during that call. I know it didn't end the way she needed. What finally closed the door for me and I think for anyone who'd been paying attention was a Facebook post 3 days later. Brittany didn't name me. She didn't have to. She wrote about financial control in relationships and what it looks like when a partner withholds resources. She wrote about feeling unheard and unsupported in moments that mattered. Craig texted me a screenshot within an hour of it going up. 3 of my coworkers mentioned it. Kayla sent me a message that said only, "I saw it. I'm sorry." She had listed my truck without permission, taken a stranger's deposit, and then written publicly about being financially controlled. She wasn't performing. She had genuinely reframed the story until she was the one who had been wronged. That was the moment the last door closed, not because of Thursday, but because of Sunday. About 10 days later, I was back on my regular schedule service calls Tuesday through Friday, invoicing on Mondays. I had moved back into my old apartment by then, a second-floor unit on Glenbrook Avenue with a backlot parking space wide enough for the truck. Kayla Anderson texted me on a Wednesday afternoon while I was finishing a compressor job at a small office building on the south side of town. She asked if she could call. I said yes. She made it clear she wasn't reaching out as Brittany's friend. She said she'd known me as a separate person long enough that she thought I deserved accurate information, and she had some. I told her I was listening. "I need you to know that none of us knew she was going to do that," Qley said. "Not the marketplace thing." She'd mentioned the Bachelorette budget in the group chat and asked for ideas, but nobody knew what she was actually planning until after it already happened. I told her I believed her. Madison left the group chat that same night, Qley said. Rachel told Brittany she's not coming to the wedding. She paused. "I guess there's no wedding now." She told me Brittany had tried to set up a dinner to smooth things over same restaurant the group always went to, a Thursday reservation, 7 people invited. 2 showed up. Brittany had sat at the head of a mostly empty table for close to an hour before she asked for the check. I didn't say much when Kayla finished telling me that. Brittany had organized everything around that bachelorette party, all those people together, celebrating her, the kind of night she'd been planning since January. That was what the money was supposed to make possible. That was what the truck was supposed to generate the money. And now there was no group left to hold the party for. My old landlord had the unit. It took 3 days to sort the paperwork and a weekend to move my furniture out of Danny's garage and back to the place where it had always belonged. The bathroom tile was the same. The kitchen window still stuck if you didn't lift and push at the same time. I went grocery shopping alone for the first time in 8 months. I stood in the beer aisle and picked up a 6-pack of a brand I'd stopped buying because Brittany didn't like the smell of it, and I put it in the cart without thinking twice. I got a rotisserie chicken and a few other things I didn't have a specific plan for. I ate standing at the counter with the news on low. It was just dinner. A few weeks after that, I was sitting at the same counter on a Tuesday morning before my first call, coffee in hand. The kitchen window cracked open. Early September, the kind of morning when the air is finally cooler than it's been all summer and everything outside is still. My phone was face down on the counter. I left it that way until the coffee was gone. I can't remember the last time I had done that. 3 months after the parking lot, the $5,000 bachelorette party that Brittany had needed badly enough to list my truck for the one she'd been planning since January, the anchor event that was supposed to center the whole group around her had never happened. Neither had the wedding. I ran into Kayla at a coffee shop near her office on a Thursday morning in early November. She was ahead of me in line, and we both noticed at the same time. She asked if I had a few minutes, and I said yes. We got our drinks and found a table by the window. She talked carefully, the way someone does when they've thought through what they want to say before sitting down to say it. She told me Brittany had moved out of the place we'd shared, into a studio on the second floor of an older building on Carver Street, one of those units where the window looks out over the parking lot instead of the street. The rent was lower. She was picking up extra shifts at Meridian to cover things. She tried to do the girls' dinner again, Kayla said. She was turning her cup slowly in her hands. September. Same place the group always went. Marchetti's on 5th. She reserved for 7. She paused. 2 people came. I looked at my coffee. I wasn't one of them, Kayla said. I sent her a message and said I was sorry and that I couldn't make it. She looked out the window for a moment. I'm still not sure if that was the right call. I told her it sounded like a hard one. She told me one more thing before we left. A few weeks before, she and Brittany had talked on the phone, a long call, the kind that happens when something has finally settled and both people in it can feel that. At the end of the call, Brittany said something quietly, the kind of quiet that comes from a thought that has been sitting in place long enough to lose its edges. I don't even know why I thought that was okay. Not a speech, not a performance, just a sentence that had found its way out late into a conversation that had already moved past needing it. I sat with that for a moment. The coffee was good. The November light through the window was low and yellow, doing what it does that time of year, making everything look like it's in the middle of being reconsidered. I paid for both drinks when we stood up. Kayla said I didn't have to. I said I knew. I didn't feel satisfied. I felt like I'd been carrying something for a long time and had finally set it down somewhere and walked away from it. The truck passed inspection in December. I drove it to a show at an outdoor venue downtown, 3 local acts, standing room, cold enough that I needed a jacket. I'd bought the ticket 2 months out because I felt like it, and I went alone because I felt like it, and nobody needed to know where I was going because nobody asked. I still do the same work. Service calls, most days. I wake up before light and drive the same roads I've been driving for years, and the truck starts every time. There are things I know now that I didn't know before all of this. But I wouldn't call it wisdom. Wisdom is what you say when you think you walked away with something worth the price of entry. What I walked away with was the truck, and the apartment, and the Tuesday mornings with the coffee and the window open and the phone face down on the counter. Those things were always mine. I just had to get back to them. The truck is still mine. That's what stays with me, not what she did, but the simple fact that it is still mine.